Welcome to the 17th episode of Authors Unknown, where we examine an anonymous author and attempt to learn their identity and learn about the people in society that they lived in. This season, we'll focus on unknown 14th century author behind Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and who he might be. I am Issam Ahmed, and this is Authors Unknown. Everyone has heard about King Arthur and his knights, as there has been countless movies, books, and adaptations. Today we are going to examine the story about one of his knights, Sir Gawain, and try to understand how the author's culture and society are reflected through this story. The story, presented as a poem, starts off with a quick retelling of the founding of Britain. The tale is mythology and portrays King Arthur and his knights as legendary heroes. The story continues at Christmas time in Camelot. 15 days into the feast, Arthur grows bored and decides to declare a game. He will not eat his dinner unless he hears a marvelous story. As most of the knights ignore this request, an unknown stranger enters the hall. This stranger is described as a huge knight with a beautiful face. His elaborate costume is green with gold linings, and even his skin is green. The horse he rode on is green, as is his beard, hair, and the axe he carried. Remind you of any song? The Green Knight then demands to see their leader, to which Arthur responds with politeness. The Green Knight refuses to join the festivities and delivers a challenge, a test for King Arthur's knights. The challenge is a simple one. Strike the Green Knight with his own axe, and exactly a year and a day later, the Green Knight will return the strike. As the crowd stays in shock and awe of the strangeness of the challenge, the stranger doubts and insults Arthur's court's bravery and reputation. Arthur steps forward to take a swing, and is immediately stopped by his nephew, the title character Sir Gawain. He requests that he may take on the challenge, to which Arthur agrees. After Gawain and the Green Knight talk terms of the challenge, the Green Knight exposes his neck for the strike, unfeathered and unfazed. Gawain does a clean strike and the stranger's head goes rolling around the court. Miraculously, the Green Knight picks up his own head and re-utters the term of the agreement, and then rides off. Arthur and Gawain, after a bit of shock, then proceed to hang the axe and continue the festivities. The story continues with Sir Gawain's adventure, but let's stop here and discuss what we can understand about the author's culture and society. In the story, the Green Knight mentions that he came here because he heard the reputation for bravery among Arthur's men and wanted to test them. This shows how people of the 14th century considered their honor and held their reputation at the highest level. This was much more predominant with the higher ruling class and the knights, with the code of chivalry. When the Green Knight starts questioning the court's honor and insulting their reputation, Arthur and Gawain take the ridiculous challenge instead of ignoring him simply to defend their honor. The poem also shows how hierarchy was very important to their society. In the scene describing the feast, it places Arthur and his queen at the high table, which was considered a place of privilege. When the Green Knight issues his challenge to the court, everyone at the feast looked at Arthur for guidance, in order to follow his move. Sir Gawain steps up to the challenge because he considers it below the king's honor. Just like honor and reputation is a key to a knight, so is obeying and honoring one's lord. This honor and hierarchy shown in the poem makes me understand how medieval society considered kings and knights infallible. Another aspect we can gather from the author's culture is the easy acceptance of magic. In the poem, the court was initially awed and amazed by the appearance of a giant and completely green knight, who survived the beheading in front of them, but they don't seem to question it. They just go back to the feast and put it off as a wonder. Prior to modern times, magic and magical creatures were considered a day-to-day reality, and the poem clearly shows how people of the 14th century believed in magical creatures. They just don't question what they saw and accept it as part of reality. This helps to show how their society was so superstitious. Learning from the past, it makes one think about their present society and culture. Are we any different from the people from the past? The story of Sir Gawain was set in a mythological history of England, which gave a parallel view of the author's society. We can use this to see a deeper understanding on how our society has changed from the Middle Ages and the time of the knights. Today we might not consider honor or the code of chivalry as important as the author's society, but reputation is still important to us, especially among the wealthy, celebrities, corporations, and leaders. With social media, everything we do and say is judged by others, and therefore very easy to ruin someone's reputation or to increase it. We still consider our reputation among our peers and try to maintain it. Just like Sir Gawain, we still perform ridiculous challenges on social media in order to get approval of our peers and superiors. Hierarchy today society might not be as well defined as in the 14th century, but it is very much a part of our social lives. More importantly, today we are less inclined to hold people of higher position as infallible. Information and knowledge are much more easily accessible today compared to the 14th century, which allows even the most common people to question the judgment of our leaders. This accessibility of knowledge and cameras are also why our belief in magic and magical creatures have decreased. Our reaction to a green giant knight would be much different than it was in Arthur's court, though we're still inclined to some conspiracy theories. One thing that would be familiar to the people of the 14th century if they were to visit today is the way that we stuck to tradition and customs. At the beginning of the poem, there's an elaborate description of the Christmas festivities, and the author focuses on the proper way and customs. We still try to stick to culture that has been passed down by the previous generation. Tradition, customs, and culture evolve over time, but some basic things remain. For example, the Christmas tree and the exchange of gifts, or even a big meal with our family. There's a lot we can gather from reading a story or poem to get a better understanding of the author's society, or to compare it to our present society and learn something. We may not learn the author's name, but we can know and learn about their culture and values. That's why I recommend this reading to others. Even a silly tale of a green giant can give great insight into the social life, heroism, and virtues of the knights of the 14th century. Join me in next week's episode of Authors Unknown, where we discuss more about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and how the author might have been giving details about a real alien encounter. I'm Isam Ahmed, and this has been Authors Unknown.